Quick question. How many of you have Googled yourselves? Hands up. Half, maybe 2/3, couple not admitting to it, kind of. Okay. How many of you think you're going to be looked up online by a potential employer? Okay, everybody's hand should be up. The reality is companies will look you up online. They're not looking for anything bad, but they're looking to just understand what's perhaps out there. You know, recent examples of high-profile internet viewing or background checking have included things like Paris, the girl in Kent, who was appointed as the police commissioner for children. You know, it turned out her Twitter profile 2 years earlier was talking about her smoking and drinking and doing other stuff she perhaps shouldn't have been doing as a 14-year-old. The police force hadn't done a decent background check. Yeah, so organizations are starting to become very aware of this information being out there. So it's a question of making sure you're aware of what's out there yourself. So if anybody in the world Googled me, this is what they would see coming back. So down the bottom, how to build a business using LinkedIn. Okay, I speak at schools, as I said. That's a lecture I did at Imperial. Nothing exciting, if I'm completely honest. It was good fun at the time, but it was a while ago now. 192 is the old Director Inquiries website. If you want to know where I live, you can pay 50p and find out, based on the electoral roll. Now, there's five profiles coming back here for Lincoln. Yeah, it's a relatively unique name, but Lincoln G is me, Lincoln A is my granddad, and Lincoln J is my dad. Slightly confusing at Christmas, but we're all called Lincoln. But this stuff's out there. So if you wanted to know, you can track it down, because it's all based on the electoral roll. Back down again, we've got things like Coots Cues. Nothing to do with me or the family. Some guy called Dave founded a company that produces snooker and billiard cues. They happen to be based in Lincoln, so it comes back, because Lincoln and Coots are on the website. Further up, CII, again, another talk I gave at the joys of the Chartered Institute of Insurers. Terribly exciting. A couple other presentations. Photographs. I mean, photographs are a classic one. Yeah, the first three are ones I control. The other two aren't. If I'd realized the photograph was going to go public, I wouldn't have stood there with a beer talking to John. I can get it taken down. I haven't bothered. But, you know, the stuff's out there. SlideShare, it's a system I use. I use Twitter so people can see that information. Some more university stuff. But the top link that comes back relates to LinkedIn. And it's not by accident. LinkedIn have an agreement, which means whatever information you share within the site, some of or all of that information is available publicly. So you tend to find when you look somebody up online, a LinkedIn link will come back somewhere within the results. So what you see is you see a public profile. So this is my public profile. It's information I've chosen to share. Now the default setting for LinkedIn is if any of you have profiles, whatever you say within the site is all visible externally of the site, unless you choose to change it otherwise. But what we see here, I have a photograph, mainly so people can distinguish whether it's me, my dad, or my granddad. I've got a headline describing what I do, location and industry. There's then a little bit about what I say. There's then a little bit about in terms of my experience. There is then a reference to past jobs. There's nothing there in terms of education, interests, likes, dislikes, skills. None of that is relevant. This information is what I'm happy for anybody in the world to know. Literally, it has to be treated as anybody in the world can see this. But if somebody wanted to see my full profile within LinkedIn, firstly, they would have to be a member. Secondly, they'd have to be somewhere within my network. So if I just sign in, I'll show you what that looks like. Here we go. So, logged into the site. This is now my profile. So, my profile is very similar to what we've seen previously. So, same photograph, same headline, same location, same industry, same current, same past jobs. There's now some education. You can see my activity, so what I've been up to recently. You can see the same summaries we saw before. You can see the same experience. You can now see the detail about past jobs. You can now see the joys that are skills and expertise. You can now see some volunteering work. You can see some education. You can see some courses. And you can see what other people say about me as well. All the information we're seeing here is visible to anybody in my network. Now, if you were to think of it in terms of what's important for you, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you have a photograph. And have a photograph that's professional. Not a wedding photograph, one on holiday, one with a beer, none of that stuff. Have a photograph that reflects you based on the industries that you want to be seen in. If you want to go into the creative world, cool, have a creative photo, but don't have a shot where you're staring down the lens of a camera. Never do a selfie, ignore all that stuff, but go with a photograph that's important, that relates to you. Your headline, this section here, is what people will then see without looking at your profile. What I mean by that, you can see on the right-hand side, it refers to somebody called Colin Bishop. As somebody I may know, it says he's a project management at LSBU. No idea what that means. I know it's London South Bank University, but I don't know what project management means because it's one of those phrases that's horrible, it's a catch-all. The thing with your headline is your headline should reflect who you are. So you might say, graduate in X, Y, Z, looking for opportunities in this industry. Or having been X years in Y role, now looking to. Whatever you say in your headline is what you're happy for people to know about you. We can see slightly further down, Georgia Payne describes herself as a service delivery manager, ITIL Prince 2 practitioner. Now, service delivery manager to me doesn't mean a huge amount, but I do know it relates to IT. ITIL I know is to do with project management methodology, and so too is Prince 2. So I'm making an assumption she's something to do with projects and technology. I don't know the industry, but it gives me a bit of an indication. Vicky, her profile says she's a manager, accounting and finance at Hudson. Basically, that's a job title. Does anybody know who Hudson are, just out of curiosity? Yeah? Hudson are a recruiter. They're about the 5th largest in the world. But if it actually said she's a manager, accounting and finance at Hudson Recruitment in Australia, you get a much clearer indication as to who she is and actually what she does. So your headline should be something that describes you. The information that then appears below that, simple stuff like location, that's where you want to be seen. Industry, that's the industry that you want to work in if you've not worked in the industry previously. It's where you want to be seen. The information below there then is just what you say further down. It's just a brief summary of what you describe. Now, creating, editing, and building is as simple as edit profile. All you do is then go to the relevant section that says rights for you. So if you want to change your headline, simply go to the little what looks like a crayon and amend the information accordingly. You can describe in your headline up to 120 characters, so you can say quite a lot if you want. Further down, you'll then see a web link. This web link here relates to your public profile. So for those of you who are already using the site and you didn't realize you have a public profile, this is where you need to go in and take away the information you don't want anybody in the world to know about you. So just make sure you're clear as to what's out there. What you're also able to do under here is a thing called customize your profile URL. Basically what that means is you can put your name at the end of the web link, which means that then when Google searches for you, you can be found easier. It also means you can use this as part of a CV, for example. It's very common nowadays. Recruiters will say, what's your profile on LinkedIn? That's your profile URL on LinkedIn, that piece of information. So just make sure that that then reflects you and you've got the information that's public that you're happy to share. Contact info, as silly as it sounds, the amount of times I've come across people's profiles where they've got old email addresses, or more importantly, embarrassing email addresses. I connected with somebody recently who's a client, who's a chairman of a very well-known company, and he uses his personal email address, his home email address on LinkedIn. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but his home email address refers to his sporting interests rather than him. And it kind of just didn't seem right. So have something in terms of the email address that's accurate and relevant to you. Mobile number, again, if you want it, chuck it up there. But further down, it's about talking about yourself in the way you want to be seen. Now, I already mentioned your summary is about a coffee conversation. It's what you would tell somebody over a coffee. It's not what you would say in a CV, because your profile statement on a CV typically is short, purposefully so. But the downside with a short summary is that it doesn't give you the opportunity to go into detail as to why you're doing what you're doing or why you're looking to do what you're doing. So you can, if you want, go into quite great depth about what you're looking to do, why you're moving on, or the industries that you're interested in. And it doesn't all have to be text-based information. So if you've done things that you're particularly proud of that have a relevance to what you want to do going forward, under the drop-down menu, you can add a web link or you can upload files. So you can upload PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints about things you're proud of, types of work that you've undertaken. If you've got videos, showcase reels, you can upload that information yourself as well. So it doesn't have to just be static information in terms of text. You can get quite creative with it if you wanted to. The information, though, that you say here is, or must rather, match what you tell somebody face to face. There should be no contradictory information here. So if you say you want to go off and work for an accountancy firm and the reasons are because you're passionate about numbers or whatever it might be, that's fine, but then you shouldn't go into detail about other things that are less relevant. It's about keeping it focused for you based on how you want to be seen. Because bearing in mind, you've not got the opportunity to stand here and defend the information when somebody's viewing it. So you need to make sure it sells you. Further down, you'll then start talking about your jobs. So where you work, what you've done, what you've been involved in, stuff you're proud of. If you've done a job before and you never want to do it again, make reference to it, but don't talk about it. Whatever you say here must match your CV. Job title, employer name, period of employment. The amount of times I've been involved in recruitment where people have been not taken forward in terms of applications is because their CV doesn't match what they're saying online. The information must match in terms of the content. At the very least, the job title, employer name, and date of employment. Again, though, if you've done particular work that you're really proud of that relates to a particular job, again, you can showcase that by adding a link again or uploading a file. So you can support what you're saying. If the paper that you're writing, the thesis that you're doing, your dissertation you're proud of, if you want to, you could upload it to give people an understanding as to what you're about. You don't have to, but it's not necessarily a bad idea. As I say, when you go to describe your jobs, if you don't want to do the job again, don't go into much detail. I enjoyed being a recruiter, don't really want to be one again, so make reference to what it was and that's it.